Are we ready? Good evening. This meeting is being held in accordance with public laws of 1975, Chapter 231, and adequate notice has been given in accordance with the Sunshine Law. Notice was published on December 7, 2016, in the Union County Local Source, the official newspaper of the Township of Springfield, and posted in the Annex Building on December 30th, 2016. Please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Gentlemen, we have a roll call.
Yes, sir. Mr. Luigi Monaco is absent. Mr. Stephen Hochstein? Here. Mr. David Schnurr?
Here.
Mr. Mark Cunningham?
Here.
Mr. Daniel Poltrock?
Here.
Ms. Jody Cohen? Here. Vice Chair Greg Roth?
Here.
Chairman Anthony Fonseca?
Here.
We have a quorum, sir.
Thank you. I'd like to ask for approval for the minutes of August. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
Are there any objections or abstentions?
Abstain.
Abstain.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We have one resolution for approval. That was application 2017-14, Angela and Larry Molinelli, 33 Redwood Road, Block 1902, Lot 9. That was for a front yard variance for a fence. Okay, is there a motion to approve that resolution?
I'll move to approve the resolution for application 2017-14.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a roll call.
Mr. Hochstein?
Yes.
Mr. Cunningham?
Yes.
Mr. Schnurr?
Yes.
Mr. Poltrock?
Yeah.
Chairman Fonseca?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Our first application tonight is a continuation from last month. It's application 2017-15, Erica Frakova, 156 Pitt Road, Block 1801, Lot 64. That is for a side yard and lot coverage variances for the addition. Please come forward.
Yeah, I think it should.
You're good right there.
We're going to swear you both in again, just because it's been a little while. So if you both raise your right hand, please raise your right hand. You swear testimony you're about to give is the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, thank you. Can you please give your name for the record, spelling your last name?
Erica Farcoa.
And your address, please?
F-E-R-K-O-V-A.
And your address, please?
Address 156 Skip Road, Springfield.
Thank you.
Karen Caleb, K-H-A-L-A-F, 18 Bank Street, Summit.
Thank you.
I think there were going to be some changes made from, on the plans from last month to this month.
Yes.
Want to tell us what we've done?
Yes. What we've done is we've relocated the air conditioning condensers from the right side to the rear of the house, therefore eliminating that request for the side yard setback for the AC condensers. We've amended the plans to show the driveway in relationship to the house as you requested, and the setbacks are now designated to the overhang as opposed to the footprint of the building, whereas the previous plans had setback dimension to the body of the house and the garage. So we made this amendment. And then one of the items that came up as a result of the overhang setback dimension is the front left corner of the proposed one-story porch at the front door entrance is, the required front yard setback is 30 feet, and the proposed a little tiny dimensional increment that kicks in the need for front yard variance for the porch corner overhang.
So, on the variance relief packet, the front yard setback, you had existing at 30.99, and now you're saying it's 29.8?
Do you have the zoning information dated August 30th? Because that was revised and sent in to,
No, this says 719.
that's last month.
Right, I don't have the, I just have the plans.
Okay, so,
Do you have it?
No, we didn't get that chart, I don't think.
Well, I don't think we got the chart.
the chart is on the site plan, the revised chart, and it's basically the same information. That is on the zoning 2012-5 form.
That's what you're looking for. Why is this one?
So,
This is revised date.
Yeah, see, I don't have that, okay. Okay,
do any of you have it?
well, I have it now,
Okay, okay.
okay. All right, because the original one it was a little bit different, okay.
Yeah, so the chart on the site plan itself shows the setback for the front yard, the required 30 feet, and the existing is 30.99 to the body of the house. The existing to the eave, the existing eave is 29.8, so it's existing non-conforming. And then our proposed is 30.7 to the body of the house, but to the eave, it's 29.5. So it's also non-conforming by a difference of 0.5 and 0.8 feet. And it's just the corner of the porch, it's not the whole front of the house, just a little one-story area.
Anybody from the board have any questions right now?
I would just like to say thanks for drawing the garage, and now we understand the plan and the whole package a little bit better.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for granting us a continuance.
Sam, do you have any issues with the changes that were made?
I do not. I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I went
That's right.
through the minutes and the hearing, and I talked to the applicant's architect, and the revisions were made as per board request, and I also spoke with the neighbor who was concerned about the location of the shed. He's very satisfied, and he's okay with that, so I have no issues.
Okay. I mean, as far as the front setback goes, I mean, it's just a tad off there, so I don't really see that as being a big issue. The fact that you've moved the air conditioning units to the back, that really helps quite a bit. I mean, at this point, the driveway is a lot clearer to understand along with the garage and so forth. Do any of our professionals have any questions or comments? And nobody on the board has any questions? Is there anybody from the public that would like to be heard on this application? Okay, then I think with the changes that you've made, I think we can go ahead and I think we can approve the application as it stands. So I'd like to ask for a motion to approve application 2017-15, Erica Forkova, 156 Pitt Road, Block 1801, Lot 64, and that's for the side yard and lot coverage variances for their addition. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve application 2017-15.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
May we have a roll call?
Mr. Hochstein?
Yes.
Mr. Cunningham?
Yes.
Mr. Schnur?
Yes.
Mr. Poltrock?
Yes.
And Chairman Fonseca.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. If you'd like to waive receipt of the resolution, you can. By doing so, you can start sooner. However, if somebody does come forward with an argument or something like that, you may have to stop work. It's entirely up to you. There's nobody in the room that's questioning anything here. So it's up to you. We can make that available if you'd like. I think you're... Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Good luck.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, our next application is 2017-17, Congregation of Israel, 353 Mountain Avenue, Block 1801, Lot 30. That's for lot coverage and building coverage variances for a new house. Please come forward.
Counsel, how many witnesses do you have? 3, okay. We'll swear them in as they come, so.
Oh, color. Yes, I said the same thing. Oh, how about that? Technology. Yeah, it's a lot easier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Clara Horelick, appearing on behalf of the Congregation Israel of Springfield for approval with variances of a proposed new construction single-family home. Can you hear me?
You know, it's the railing is like,
Oh,
gotcha. No, you're good, you're good, you're good.
okay. For a proposed new construction for a single-family residential home, which is to be built for the youth director for the synagogue. As you had stated, this is 353 Mountain Avenue, Block 1801, Lot 30. That's an S60 zone. The current house, which is being used for the youth director, will be demolished in the event that we get the approvals for this property. There are 2 variances that are being sought this evening. One is lot coverage, the other is building coverage. This is pursuant to Section 3514 of the Schedule of Zoning Limitations for the Township of Springfield ordinances. Specifically, with respect to the building coverage, 25% is the maximum allowed, 30.05% is what is being proposed. With regard to the lot coverage, 36% is the maximum allowed, 47.58% is proposed. And as to the subject property, it is 6,000 square feet, and a conforming lot is 7,500 square feet. It will be shown through the testimony this evening that the subject property is an undersized lot, which creates the hardship that necessitates the variances. In addition, there is a recorded easement in connection with a shared driveway that creates a hardship situation. It is expected that the formal and detailed testimony that you will hear this evening from the professionals will support the application, will prove to the board that there are hardships, and will show the justifications for the variances. Prior to calling my witnesses, I would just like to take this moment to make a few points to the board before they give their testimony. First, as stated, the subject property is an undersized lot by 1,500 square feet. The building coverage would actually not be an issue if the house was being built on a non-undersized lot, on a conforming lot. Further, the proposed house actually complies with all of the setback requirements. As such, the house will appropriately fit, in our opinion, within the character of the neighborhood. Also, as stated, the subject property has a shared driveway easement situation with Lot 31, which is located right next door at 351 Mountain Avenue. This requires a paved area for driveway access for the neighboring lot to get to the back of the neighbor's property. Unfortunately, this easement actually accounts for 360 square feet of lot coverage. Now, once the proposed house is built, we will be eliminating the garage that was with the current house, which was in the rear, and a shed that was in the rear. So the driveway will no longer be needed for purposes of Congregation Israel of Springfield's Youth Director residence. They will instead have a garage in the front, and based on the size of their basement and their garage, they will no longer need the shed either. Also, it should be noted that the two accessory structures that are in the rear of the current subject property are in violation currently, we didn't put them up, are in violation currently of the setback requirements for an accessory structure. So when we eliminate these and demolish these, we are in fact improving the situation for our neighbors. Now, as to the lot coverage, while there is an increase in lot coverage from what is allowable, it will be shown through the testimony of our professionals that we have a dry well and that we have mitigated any problems that would be associated with the impervious coverage, lot coverage increase. And we've also provided the board with drainage calculations so that you can see that we have gone through the scenarios with regard to this issue. I would state as a final comment for you before the testimony that the synagogue is growing with many young families, and these young families have kids. The youth director position is very important to Congregation Israel of Springfield, not only for the current synagogue, but for the future of the synagogue. The synagogue does own, as I stated at the beginning, 345 Mountain Avenue, which is the current youth director's residence. Unfortunately, that house can no longer meet the needs of the youth director or the synagogue. The proposed house, which will be replacing this house, will in fact meet those needs, based on the number of bathrooms, the number of bedrooms, the fact that we've got storage space because our synagogue currently is out of storage space. The planner will show also that this is a religious institution, which is not the house, but that the synagogue is a religious institution, which is an inherently beneficial use that serves the purpose of zoning. The synagogue's youth, being a top priority in the synagogue community, needs this youth director resident facility. This is an Orthodox synagogue, and the youth director does need to be within walking distance of the synagogue. The proposed house, in the opinion of the professionals, as will be shown, represents a good planning on the part of the synagogue in connection with the youth director residence and with meeting current and future needs. So, appearing tonight will be the following for testimony. The professionals: Michael Lanzafama from Casey & Keller, a licensed professional engineer; Joel Schulman of Gruskin Architecture and Design, a licensed professional architect; and Matthew Seckler of Stonefield Engineering, a licensed professional engineer and licensed planner. Also present this evening, if any members of the board or the public have questions, the president of the synagogue, Ben Hoffer, is present. One caveat: Mr. Lanzafama needs to leave early due to another hearing, so I'm going to call him first. It's up to the chairman whether you want to, after his testimony, have the board ask him questions or the public. If not, Mr. Seckler is here, who also is an engineer and can answer engineering questions. So at this point, I'd like to call Mr. Lanzafama.
Mr. Lanzafama, I'll swear you in. Do you swear testimony you're about to give and any evidence you present to the board is the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank
My
you.
name is Michael Lanzafama. That's L-A-N-Z-A-F-A-M-A. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor, licensed in the state of New Jersey. I'm a principal with the firm of Casey & Keller Incorporated, 258 Main Street, Millburn, New Jersey. been licensed since 1984, and I've testified in Springfield on numerous occasions.
And your license is current in good
It
state?
is, it is.
Thank you, Mr. Lonzafama. If you would be so kind as to just take the board through this proposed house from the engineering perspective.
Certainly. We were engaged by the synagogue to prepare a boundary and topographic survey of the property, as well as assist in developing a site plan for the subject property.
Sir, excuse me 1 second. Just for the record, we do accept your
sorry.
credentials. It's quite okay. No, please proceed.
Now, as Clara pointed out, the property in question is Lot 30 of Block 1801. It's on the southeasterly side of Mountain Avenue, about 450 feet west of Shunpike. The property, as was pointed out, is a 50 by 120-foot lot, 6,000 square feet in size, and is located in the S60 zone. As the board is aware, the S60 zone requires a 7,500 square foot lot and a 60-foot lot frontage. So we're currently undersized by not only lot area, but lot width as well. These are existing non-conforming conditions. Sheet 2 in your set of plans shows you the existing conditions.
Sir, real quick, we'll just mark that, those are the plans as Exhibit
Those are the plans
A.
that were submitted.
Sure, we'll mark it as Exhibit A,
The
and
whole
that way,
set?
if you, the whole set, and if you just continue to just refer to each page for the record, and that way you can mark it up and it'll be part of the record. Thank you.
So what's been marked is A1 is the plan set consisting of the cover sheet, the title and topographic survey, as well as the site plan for the subject property. The existing survey showing the existing conditions shows you the centrally located house, shows you the accessory structures that are located in the southeast corner and along the westerly boundary line. All are very close to both the side and rear yard setbacks. The topography of the site is much that it just drains from south to north into Mountain Avenue. The roof leaders basically spill on grade and also contribute to the runoff into the roadway. Mountain Avenue, as you know, is a county roadway. There is a stormwater collection system a little further to the east. Along that easterly boundary line of our lot and adjacent to tax lot 21 is a common driveway easement that exists. The existing bituminous drive straddles that property line, and we are required to keep that in place to provide for access to the adjoining property, that is tax lot 31. Moving on to the grading and drainage plan that we prepared for the subject property. You can see that the house is centrally located. The proposed house will be eliminating the garage and frame shed that is located at the rear of the lot. And as you can see from the zoning table, the building itself meets all of the bulk standards with regard to front setback, side setback, combined side yard, rear yard, as well as building height. As the attorney pointed out, the variances we seek are for lot coverage. 36% is permitted under the ordinance. We are at 47.56% in amount of square feet. That's a 695 square foot variance that we're seeking. And as Clara pointed out, the adjoining driveway that provides access to the adjoining lot on our property is already 360 square feet. That accounts for more than half of the square footage that we are non-compliant on this application. The building itself, the footprint is allowed to be 1,500 square feet based upon the size of the lot. We're proposing 1,803. There's a 303 square foot variation that we are seeking. To manage the stormwater due to the increased impervious surface on the site, we are collecting all of the roof water via roof leaders and roof drainage system and taking it into a dry well that'll be located under the front driveway area. This dry well is 6 foot in diameter, 6 feet deep, embedded in stone. So it will absorb and detain all of the runoff from the roof area. Just as a matter of, to compare where we're at currently today, compared to where the application proposes, the site is already non-compliant with regard to lot coverage at 41%. So we're not increasing the amount of existing impervious surface all that much. This detention system is designed for the 100-year storm. It will, as I said, take the runoff from the roof area. It is designed in such a way that there is a grate, an open grate, like a regular collection grate, that would be at the surface. And once the system should fill up, if the rainfall were even greater than it was designed for, it would bubble out of that sheet flow into Mountain Avenue and then run easterly towards the collection system in the county right of way. So it maintains the natural drainage pattern. We're not discharging any runoff onto adjoining property owners, so there will be no impact on those property owners as a result of this application. And that pretty much summarizes the engineering aspects of this application.
The only thing would be to summarize what you just stated about the dry well. From an engineering design perspective, where the dry well is located is the best location to address the lot coverage issue.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was a nice presentation. Anybody on the board have any questions?
Sam, I have a question. Is there any issue with percentage of front yard coverage with having a driveway in the front on this? Okay.
Do any of our professionals have any questions? I have a question.
Sure.
Next to, if you're looking at the temple on Mountain Avenue, to the right, it appears that they own that lot where there's a two-tone fence. And if I'm not mistaken, the house next door is the home that the youth director lives in.
Yes.
Why not knock the house down and use the combined lot and where the fence is and where the house is to build the new house?
We have the president from the synagogue here, so he can explain, if you would come up, Ben Hoffer. My understanding is right now, and I'll let him testify, but my understanding is right now the synagogue has reached maximum capacity with regard to storage issues and such. So that house, being as small as it is right now being utilized in part for storage and will be used for more of the needs of meeting that synagogue for that purpose.
I thought that that house was going to be demolished if this new application was approved.
It will no longer be the youth director's residence. Down the line, that may be the case, but let the president speak to that issue.
Sir, before you speak, I got to swear you in, okay? Please raise your right hand. Do you swear testimony you're about to give and any evidence you present to the board is the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I affirm.
Thank you. Can you please state your name for the record, spelling your last name, and then give your address?
Sure. Benjamin Hoffer, 183 Milltown Road, Springfield. Last name Hoffer.
Thank you. And your position?
I'm the president of the synagogue.
Okay, thank you.
So first, just to clarify, I think what Clara was referring to when she said that the house would be demolished if the approvals were granted was the house that is currently there on 353 Mountain Avenue.
Okay, I may have misunderstood.
Yeah, no, I mean, if no one realizes this is the decrepit, stinky house on Mountain Avenue, you know it when you get close to it, kind of hits you in the face. So if you go and visit it, I'll give you a tour. You'll get 2 feet in and you'll turn around.
I'll take your word for it.
Okay. So in terms of the lot next door, so we have a lot of kids in our community, especially over the past number of years. We've been having babies born at record rates, which is a great thing. And don't worry, it doesn't burden the school system as our children go to private Jewish schools, generally outside of Springfield. But we do need the play space. You know, we would like to have a play space next door. If you come by on a Saturday morning, you'll see it's full of children. To remove that would be to take away a real amenity for the synagogue. Lastly, we are trying to preserve the storage space. As Clara mentioned, there is very limited space in the building. We even had to take away the rabbi's office from the rabbi to use it as a space to store stuff because we don't have space in our building. We have more families moving in. We had, I think, 8 families join this summer. which is a great thing for the community. But with those families come even more children. Our families tend to be a little bit larger than the average American family. I think the average family has 4 children in our community, so it's a little bit larger. So we need more storage, and we're just out of space.
Okay. It just seemed to me like a logical solution, and then use the house that's kind of run down, do something else with that for your storage, et cetera, and so forth. Let's solve a bunch of issues there.
It could, but this preserves our long-term ability to have contiguous parcels. So.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody from the public that would like to have any questions for the engineer? Please come forward.
Okay. Ma'am, could you please identify yourself?
Wait, you,
Deborah LaSalle, 351 Mountain Avenue, Springfield.
Can you spell your last name, please?
L-A, capital S-A-L-L-E.
Thank you.
And again, it might not be an engineer question, it could probably wait until another one, but he did answer the variances are needed because the lot coverage size is
Yes.
smaller than the house. Okay. And as far as our the driveway that we share, I don't know if he's the right person to ask, but if there's this is a long-awaited blessing that this house is being taken down.
Ma'am, you'll have an opportunity, and for the members of the public, this is just an opportunity right now to ask questions to this.
for the engineer, because he has to leave.
You will be able to come back later and give your opinion or ask other questions.
And I just want to make sure that the variance question was answered, and the overflow of the dry well will flow onto Mountain Avenue.
That is correct.
It won't go onto the sidewalk?
It will not discharge onto your property.
Okay. And that's it for now. I'll come back.
No problem, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay.
Unless anybody else from the board has any more questions for the engineer? Okay, thank you very much.
The next witness I'd like to call is the architect, Joel Schulman.
That's good.
All right, Mr. Schulman, you ready? Okay, right, I'll swear you in. Please raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're about to give and any evidence you present to the board is the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Can you please give your name for the record, spelling your last name, and then give your business address?
Joel Schulman, S-H-U-L-M-A-N. I'm the principal of architecture at 294 Morris Avenue, Springfield, New Jersey.
Counselor, you want to establish his credentials?
Could you please tell us your credentials and then let the board know whether you're in good standing with your license?
I'm a licensed architect in New Jersey. I've been licensed since 1991. My license is current, and I've been practicing in the state of New Jersey since I've been licensed.
And have you appeared before this board or any other board testimony?
I believe I have.
We'll accept his credentials, thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Schulman, I will ask of you the same as I asked of the engineer, if you would please just take the board through the proposed house from the architectural perspective.
On the set of drawings you have in front of you, it should be labeled 4, page 4. These prints have a different number on them, but so they're not to be confused. They are the same drawing.
These switchboards, do you want to call that Exhibit B?
Sure, we'll call that Exhibit AB.
Okay.
Sorry, A2, it's not AB.
Okay.
Sorry, A2. So we had A1 for the first one.
So the house is designed as a 2-story home with a full basement. The basement houses the garage and some storage area in the back area. It is designed so the garage level is just slightly above the curb line of the street, which is allowed for the water to drain properly, as the engineer had discussed. On the first floor, you come off the driveway and go upstairs to a covered porch. Coming in a main entry door, there's a hallway through with a living room on the right-hand side, a large dining room on the left, a kitchen to the rear, and a large family room eating space in the back. There's a small study on the first floor and a stair up to the second floor. There are doors out to the back, which is only a set of stairs to get down to the grade. There is no deck planned for the back of the house. On the second floor, there are 4 bedrooms. There are 4 bedrooms upstairs. There's a large master bedroom in the rear with its own private bath and closet, and 3 bedrooms toward the front of the house which share a common bathroom. The basement itself has the garage on it, which is a 2-car garage and a door off the driveway. The design of the house is meant to fit in with the scale of the neighborhood and design of the surrounding area of the newer homes that have been being developed in the area. We've extended the front or set back the side with the porch to help with the scale of the house, so it's not one large massive wall to the street. It has a smaller element which then steps back to a larger gable in the back. The garage door is a double door, as I mentioned, and it has a door off the driveway area. The side elevation of the house on 2 sides has siding and windows, and the rear has larger amounts of glass to the backyard for light and visibility. One of the things I want to point out that's important to the coverage, which relates to the coverage area, is, as was mentioned earlier, that the youth director's family that'll be using the house will need to be able to walk back and forth to synagogue. As part of the Orthodox community, they also don't use electricity and open automatic doors and things like that on the Sabbath. So one of the concerns was with small children and having carriages, being able to bring them in and out of the storage or garage space when they're going to synagogue, which is why there's a door located off the driveway and not just a small grassed area. Also, the dining room is a little bit larger because, again, larger family, and the living room, family room space in the back is there to accommodate those children. One of the things that's important to note is that the house of size is and style is relatively important, as it's part of the compensation for the youth director. As the community needs to bring in youth directors, they want a home that is something that they could see themselves living in long term, or something to use as for their family that they're comfortable in, as opposed to feeling like they're in an apartment. In the past, we've had other youth directors that have lived in some of the smaller homes, and that has been one of the comments that they have provided. There wasn't enough room for their families to grow and had to move on. As I think Ben has mentioned, the families tend to be a little bit larger, and as they're younger, as with youth directors, they often have several children, and we want to keep them in the community as long as we can. Often what happens after the youth directors come to our community as employees of the synagogue, they stay on because of the culture and life here in the community. So we want their experience to be very positive, so they don't just come in as a job and move on, they stay with our community. The house is designed really as a comfortable space, but nothing is really oversized, as you can see. The only last point I want to make is that if we were to try to make this compliant, so you could put it in perspective, we would need to take 10 feet off the back of the house to fit for the size that we would do. We're not beyond our setbacks. We even reduced the house in width 2 feet to give it a little more air to the sides. But if we were to reduce the back to try to make it compliant, you can see we would barely get a family room, or the kitchen would be too small, or we wouldn't have enough room for the spaces. So that's basically the overview of the house and why it's designed the way it is and the way it's scaled to the surrounding area and the property.
So, Mr. Schulman, in summary, you believe that the way you've designed this house not only meets the needs of the synagogue and the youth director, but is within the character of the neighborhood. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions on the board?
Can you explain again why the garage, the manual door for the garage is in the front of the house and not, out on the side?
Yes, so the property, the way the grade of the property is set is that we would have to cut into the side of the property to get into the side of the garage. On the elevation, there is a retaining wall planned on the side of this, on the side of the property, because the neighboring property is higher as well, to maintain their access way and a safe distance, and then provide our garage so it is slightly recessed. So if we were to make a door to the side, we would need to have a larger retaining wall and a larger paved area around the side of it, also creating sort of a hole where someone could be hiding, which is something we don't want to create.
I know that as you get closer to the temple, the houses sit up a little bit higher. It kind of comes up like this. And as you're going, I guess, further towards Route 22, it's coming down somewhat. How much of it is actually going into the ground?
So the driveway itself, so this is approximately the line of the grade. If you connected the line, you could see that about 4 feet or so are
So the
being.
driveway's gonna slope from the street down?
No.
No, it'll be flat.
The
because
driveway
the
is going to
driveway's-
slope from the street
It'll be lower.
slightly up, about
That's-
6
okay.
inches, because
That's
we
right.
don't want to have water running into the
Exactly, that's
garage.
why I was asking.
So we're coming into the grade cutting into that property about 4 feet below what's there currently, and creating approximately a 4-foot retaining wall on one side that will start at 0 and climb to the back of the property, similarly to the property that's to our left as you're looking at it from the street, as there are several retaining walls on her property as well.
Yeah, it makes sense to not be able to come in through the side. Does that answer your question? Are there any other questions?
I just have one other question. With the retaining walls and the driveway being set down, you're gonna have to put some guard rails or something so people don't fall down onto the driveway, correct?
Well, we weren't planning a guard, we were only planning having a step. Since it's not considered a walking surface, it's lawn there, there's nothing that requires you to have a guardrail there.
So if somebody falls off the 4-foot-high wall onto the driveway, I'm just concerned about safety. You might want to consider putting something there to prevent children from falling.
We'll have the block at the edge sticking above the ground, so someone would have to be trying to jump over it. But since there's no reason to be walking there, it's like any other retaining wall on a property that you would have. Since it's not a walking surface there, we weren't really concerned. If we do feel that is an issue, we could put up some sort of small guard or something on it. It's only 4 feet at the house point. Obviously, it's pitching down to nothing.
Satisfactory?
Oh, toward the street, it's pitching down to that.
Anybody else on the board have any questions? Do our professionals have any questions? Is anybody from the public who would like to ask you any questions? Thank you.
At this point, I would call my final witness, Matthew Seckler of Stonefield Engineering. He's our planner.
You swear the testimony you're about to give and any evidence you present to the board is the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record, spelling your last name, and then give your work address.
My name is Matthew Seckler. That's Seckler. I'm a senior project manager at Stonefield Engineering Design. Address is 92 Park Avenue in Rutherford, New Jersey.
Mr. Seckler, would you tell the board your credentials and that your license is current and in
Yes.
good standing?
I have a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Union College. I have a Master's in City and Regional Planning from Rutgers University, licensed professional engineer and professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I've appeared before this board a handful of times previously.
And your licenses are all current?
Yes.
Thank you, we'll accept you.
Okay, Mr. Steckler, is this an exhibit, a new exhibit?
Yes, I'm gonna, I believe it should be A3.
Okay, so if you would be so kind as to take the board through the justifications for the two requested variances, building coverage and lot coverage, from the planner's perspective.
Sure, and again, I'm marking A3, it's titled Aerial Exhibit prepared by Stonefield Engineering Design. It was prepared September 19, 2017. It shows a Google Earth photo that was taken in April of 2016, so fairly current. And it's outlined on the site is, in yellow is the site. Mountain Avenue runs from along the bottom of the page with the northbound direction towards the temple and Shunpike to the left. To the right of the page is heading towards Route 22 in the southbound direction. What we've outlined here is the subject property, which is 353 Mountain Avenue. As was mentioned earlier, this is in the S60 zone, which requires 7,500 square feet for property area. And I think that really is one of the main reasons why we're here in front of this board for the number of variances that we have. As the proposed site, as it exists, only has 6,000 square feet. I've been told by the applicant they did, as is recommended by the land use law, request land from neighboring properties to see if they could reduce that variance and be able to reach up to the 7,500 square feet. None was available, so again, we're in front of this board for reasons related to that smaller lot size. What's important to note, and I'm going to actually flip this to another aerial exhibit, which I'll mark A4. This is a more zoomed out aerial exhibit prepared by Stonefield Engineering. It's prepared September 19th, 2017. Again, the site is outlined on yellow. I've zoomed this out basically to show the limits between Shunpike Road and Nelson Place. Every single lot to the right, when you're looking at this exhibit, along Mountain Avenue, along the easterly side of Mountain Avenue, is a conforming lot, at least 7,500 square feet or larger. And I think that's important when you're looking at the size of the house, and I'll explain later how this house would be permitted in terms of building coverage on every single one of those lots to the south of our property. So again, I think it's in character to the neighborhood. In addition, the existing site, as was mentioned by the temple president, is there's a house in disrepair. Seems like it's definitely it's been well used, and now it seems like it's probably more worth to tear down and rebuild and try to repair the insides and rehabilitate the house. As Clara mentioned earlier, in the survey, and this was on the site plan, so I'll pull it up on A1. On the second page, which is the survey, there was that block garage that still exists in the back. Right now it's boarded up, and the frame shed in the rear. Both of them, again, are existing nonconformities related to your variances for accessory structure. You require 5 feet from the side and rear property lines. It's a little under 2.5 feet from the side yard. The garage is under 2 feet from the rear yard, and the frame shed is under 2 feet from the side yard on the neighbor on the southerly side. So again, all those variances exist in the property, as well as the lot variances related to the undersized lot, both in narrow width and in insufficient lot size. We are redeveloping this site, and you've heard about the single-family house that we're putting on this site for the youth director. I think the architect spoke eloquently in terms of the requirement when you have this growing community, this growing community of young families. Having youth director is a draw for both the temple itself, and then this house is the draw to keep a youth director. These youth directors tend to be young families, and they are growing young families, and the existing house or those smaller houses, and even the house that currently existed on this property, really doesn't have the space to really keep a youth director as part of the community. In addition, as was mentioned, I think by Clara as well as the temple president, the space within the synagogue is very limited. So in addition to being the single-family house for the youth director, the additional storage space that they have, that the youth director could store his own products, whether it's sporting equipment or educational equipment, arts and crafts equipment, at his house as opposed to at the temple, is definitely necessary. So I'm going to pull up the site plan, which is the third sheet, this exhibit, A1, shows the single-family house. And again, we are here because of a variance for building coverage, which is a little over 30%, 30.05, where 25% is required. As I mentioned, if this was a conforming lot of 7,500 square feet, we would be at 24% lot coverage. So again, and I'll get into the C1 and C2 requests that we have for this variance, but I think we do have a hardship for the fact that this lot is undersized. And again, this is the last undersized lot as you head towards Route 22 on this stretch of Mountain Avenue. It's partially related to the house in the rear, has on Pitt Road, actually is a much deeper lot than a lot of the other houses on Pitt Road. I don't know when that subdivision was approved, what the reasons were, but clearly our property and the neighboring property, lot 31, are shallower because of that reason. However, it's important to note that this proposal is compliant with height and the side, rear yard, and front yard setbacks. So even though we're an undersized lot, so our building envelope would and hence be smaller, and the fact that, you know, when you start adding these setbacks together, we have a smaller little envelope that we could build in. We are fully compliant. We're fully compliant with height. So in terms of the view from any neighbors to our property, what they would see, whether we have a variance or building coverage or not, is unchanged. We are still the same distance away from their property or their house, and we are also the appropriate height per your variance, per your ordinance. So again, I don't see any impacts to the neighboring properties related to the building coverage. Lot coverage, you heard extensive testimony by our engineer, and he mentioned how currently the existing house, the roof leaders, or when roof leaders were fully hooked up, basically just drained to the street. In this case, we are capturing the roof leaders and putting them into a dry well. So although we have a lot coverage variance that we are increasing, I believe the fact that we are properly managing all of the rainwater that hits the roof into the dry well, I think is a significant improvement. In addition, what was mentioned, we do have a hardship related to the access easement that we are required to provide. So about about 5%, between 5 and 6% of our variance is related to the fact that we have to provide a paved driveway to our neighboring property. We don't have any benefit to this driveway once this proposed house is built. It doesn't provide any access to the rear of our, it provides access to the back of our house, but we have no reason to provide access to the rear for the vehicle. It's really just intended for a neighboring property, tax lot 31. So again, that is somewhat of a hardship that this property has, is the fact that there's, about 5 to 6% of our lot has to be paved, not for our applicant's benefit. So looking at the justifications for this application, we're looking at a bulk variance, and you could there are both C1 and C2 criteria that can be met with granting this variance. The C1 is related to hardship, and as I mentioned, this lot is undersized. It's unique in the fact that it is, again, the last undersized lot along this stretch. So I do think that there is some justification for a C1 variance. Although we're not required to meet also the C2 variance when a C1 variance is met, I think this is flexible variance can be granted for this application. Typically, we would balance the positive and negative criteria and decide and conclude that the positives outweigh the negatives in this case. I think this particular application is somewhat unique in the fact that it serves an inherently beneficial use. And although we're not here for a use variance, it's in a D1 variance that we're seeking from the board, I think you could look at some case law that investigated these kind of accessory structures that help serve inherently beneficial uses, and the three-pronged approach to deciding whether they can be deemed an inherently beneficial use, and can be the inherently beneficial use be applied in this case, which would automatically grant the positive criteria. As you know, inherently beneficial uses, in the fact that they automatically advance zoning, automatically meet that positive criteria. The three-pronged approach, and that's from the Medical Center of Princeton versus the Princeton Township ZBA, in that case they didn't meet the three prongs, but it's outlined in the appellate division case, where you basically need to identify the proposed use and the function as it relates to the inherently beneficial use, and I think we've done that here. We've outlined the fact that this is a youth director house, that it is serving basically the temple at large, and serving the functions that are required as part of that temple, and helps advance the purpose of the synagogue. We talk about how the second prong is how the proposed use is integrated within the temple, and again, it is a clear need of this temple to have this this youth director and having a continuous youth director, someone who wants to grow with the community. And last is that the specific location is necessary to provide benefits to the inherently beneficial use. So again, I think it's key that this property is located within walking distance of the temple. The fact that you have storage within this building that can be used for the temple, it needs to be nearby, it needs to be within walking distance because this is an Orthodox temple. So again, although this isn't a use variance and we're not seeking that type of relief, I think we could look at the fact that this house has similar characteristics to an inherently beneficial use. So I think the positive criteria is automatically met in that case. In addition, I think we meet purpose H related to free flow of traffic. We are providing sufficient parking for this house. Mountain Avenue, county roadway, major thoroughfare through the community, really no parking on the street, so we really need to provide all the parking within the house. So whether they do have visitors over, you want to make sure that there's sufficient parking for this house. Also, purpose I, enhancing the visual environment. Again, you've seen the house as you've driven by. It's kind of decrepit and run down, and I think the neighbor briefly mentioned how it is an eyesore, and I think that this house, based on the architectural plans, is a benefit to the visual environment. When looking at the negative criteria, I don't see any specific negative criteria related to the lot coverage, related impervious coverage calculation, because we're providing the dry well. We are basically mitigating our variance in that condition. And the building coverage, again, because we meet the height, because we meet the side yard setbacks, I think that this property is really in no effect to the neighboring, into our neighbors to the north, south, and east. In addition, when you're driving by this site is 32 feet wide. The majority of the houses, as you go down Mountain Avenue, are at least around 32 feet wide. In fact, the only two that I could, from driving by, notice were under 32 feet wide. It's the current house that's here, the next door neighbor on lot 31, and the current youth director house. All of those houses seem to be around 24 feet wide. The rest of them, as you would drive by, this house looks no wider than any of those houses as you travel down Mountain Avenue, looking to your left, going towards Route 22. So again, from the neighboring public, anyone driving by, I don't think this house will be seen as a monstrosity. I don't think it's going to be seen as oversized. It basically fits in with the neighborhood, specifically with all of the conforming lots that are located between this property and the next street as you go towards Route 22. So I think we could conclude that we do meet the C1 and C2 criteria outlined within the MLUL for granting variances related to the lot coverage related to impervious coverage, as well as the building coverage on this property.
Thank you, Mr. Seckler. Just for clarification for the board, when you were referring to inherently beneficial use, you were talking about the fact that a synagogue is a religious institution, and that is the inherently beneficial. Correct. Again, we're not here for use variance. I'm not saying that this single-family house on its own would be inherently beneficial use, but that case actually was related to kind of back room offices for a hospital, which is an inherently beneficial use. And the idea was, what does a back room, what does something that serves an inherently beneficial use need to meet in order to be deemed kind of part of that inherently beneficial use? And again, we're not here for use variance, but I think the fact that we wouldn't meet those criteria kind of shows that we do meet the purposes of zoning and that positive criteria. And that was where I wanted you to sum up as well. In your professional opinion as a planner, you believe that we have met the negative and positive criteria, is that correct? Correct. You believe that you have proven that there is, in fact, a hardship here, in fact, to the easement as well as the undersized lot, is that correct? Correct. The 6,000 square foot lot where 7,500 is the standard, as well as that easement to the neighbor on lot 31. You also believe that the purpose of the municipal land use law will be advanced by this? Correct. Do you also believe that there will not be a substantial detriment to the public good? Correct. And the benefits of the benefits of any of these deviations for the two variances will in fact substantially outweigh any detriment, is that right? Yes. And finally, this will not in any way, in your opinion, substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan or the zoning ordinance? No, and again, I think from anyone driving by, I think they would not notice any difference between this house and all the rest of the houses on the conforming lots just next door. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Does anybody on the board have any questions?
Yes, I have a question regarding the existing easement of the driveways. How will that be impacted, the new construction? And if it is impacted, how is it going to be addressed?
So I believe the intention is for it to remain open during all of construction. Again, as a planner, I can't speak to the constructability of the site, but it appears to me that it'll be allowed to be maintained. The block wall that we're constructing looks like about, it's 10 feet from the property line, or about 5 feet from that easement. So, and the driveway, so again, constructing that block retaining wall doesn't seem like it would have any impact on the easement itself.
Plus, the synagogue will take that into consideration during construction.
Any other questions? Our professionals have any questions? Is there anybody from the audience that would like to be heard regarding this, this matter? I'm sorry, please come forward.
State your name again, ma'am, for the record.
Deborah LaSalle, 351 Mountain. I don't want to miss my
It's okay.
opportunity.
No, good. Just go right ahead.
Is there a chance to have it for open public?
This is your opportunity.
Okay.
Take advantage of it.
Okay. My first question is, would I be advised when the demolition is going to happen? Like, are we advised in the area when the house is going to be taken down?
I believe so.
I'm not home?
I believe so.
We will do that.
I think it's a requirement, Sam?
Requirement by law, yeah.
Okay. And a dumpster that's placed on the property, where is that going to be located?
So, again, I think it's a construction-related item, but
Okay.
from the way I visualize this being constructed, it's likely the driveway is going to be one of the first things that's constructed, almost to be used for the equipment that needs to be brought on the site. So my guess is that where the proposed driveway will be is where the dumpster would be. But again, I believe there's requirements with the town in terms of how we would be able to permit that.
Thank you. And the other question is it possible to wet down the building before it's taken down? So the dust and everything doesn't come onto my house?
Yep.
And all the mold and everything that's in there, I'm sure.
I've been advised by the synagogue president that that will be done for the neighbor.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Is there a set schedule of hours operation? Is there, like,
I think there's a township ordinance.
township
You
requirement.
can't start before 8 in the morning?
Hours on weekday, 7 to 5.
okay,
Seven.
There won't be work.
Saturday, 8 to 5.
There'll be, I imagine, no work on Saturday. No work on Saturdays here.
okay, how about on Sunday?
No work on
Okay.
Sunday without permission first.
Okay, thank you. Also, if there's damage to the driveway with the easement and any of my property, I have pictures of my property. I don't know if you need to see it or to see how close it is. If there happens to be damage, how do we go about?
I will represent on behalf of the synagogue that they will repair any damage done to the easement.
Okay.
Okay. And that's basically it. Once you pass the paved driveway part and you go into the backyard, do you know if there's going to be an area for the fence, or is there going to be grass, or I'm not sure. I just don't know how it's going to be because I didn't finish my area because of the way next door was with easement. I just didn't know how much is going to be done, that my area is going to look horrible then.
I believe,
That makes sense.
I believe everything outside of the easement, so basically where the end of the asphalt stops,
Right.
it'll be grass, landscaping, the rest of the way behind our house and our property. Obviously, we can't
No,
but plant on your
No,
property, but.
no, but, okay, so it'll be the property that's there now, it's gravel, it's
Well,
going to be grass.
Yeah, it'll be
Okay.
planted grass or
Okay.
whatever plants they want.
And remember, the garage
Right,
is being taken down and the shed is being taken down in that back area.
thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anybody else? No further questions from the board? Okay. It was a great presentation. I certainly don't have any issues with it. I'd like to ask for an approval for application 2017-17, Congregation of Israel at 353 Mountain Avenue, Block 1801, Lot 30, for lot coverage and building coverage variances for a new home with the conditions regarding the easement and the wetting down of the home and things of that nature. I'd like to, have I omitted anything?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, I'd like to ask for an approval for the application.
I'll make an approval for application 2017-17, as stated.
Is there a second, please?
A second.
Now we have a roll call.
Mr. Cunningham?
Yes.
Vice Chair Roth?
Yes.
Mr. Hochstein?
Yes.
Mr. Schnur?
Yes.
Mr. Poltrock?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen? Yes. Chairman Fonseca?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you.
I would ask that we can waive resolution.
Yes, you can.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the board.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
A lot of us.
Happy New Year.
Now I can go to synagogue without a problem.
Yes.
Can I have my money back then?
Ooh.
Kidding.
Which is one of the reasons why we started introduced
Okay, a little housekeeping, two things. A, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess, so we're gonna come back at 7:45. B, we will not call any new witnesses after 9 o'clock.
All right, well then.
Is anyone going out for pizza?
Okay, our next application is 2017-16, RPG LLC, 75 Route 22 East, Block 3801, Lot 6. This is for a preliminary and final site plan with 2 bulk variances, A and D, 6 variance building height for a new health club facility. And I just want to state once more that we will not call any new witnesses after 9 o'clock. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Erwin Schnitzer. I'm an attorney representing RPG, which is the owner of the property located at 75 Route 22 East, Springfield, New Jersey, Block 3801, Lot 6. That property previously housed the Colonial Motel, which is in the course of being demolished, and the proposed development would consist of a new state-of-the-art building of approximately, according to our architect, of approximately 39,204 square feet, 19,602 square feet per floor, 2-floor building that will house 24-hour fitness, which is now located on the adjacent property or near this property. The variances needed are for parking, lot coverage, height, and sign variances. Our expert witnesses will get into the variances needed and the relief requested. I have 4 witnesses: Leland Titus, who is a civil engineer, Blaze Weimer, who is our architect, Gary Dean, who is a traffic engineer, and Dan Block, who is a planner. Before we get into their testimony, I understand there are objectors here who state that the notices that I have provided are defective, and I would like them to go on the record and tell me why they think the notice that I served on the property owners and published in the newspaper are defective.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Stephen Bulkowski. I'm an attorney. I'm here representing HEC Companies HEC Holding Companies LLC. We actually are the adjoining property owner, and we've discussed with the board attorney before this matter going on the record that part of the application tonight also incorporates access from Lot 9, and the notice, the 200-foot notice, didn't extend to that Lot 9 piece of property as required by the New Jersey Supreme Court of Knuckle versus Borough of Little Ferry. I gave the copy of the case to the board's attorney, and it's our position that without the proper notice to the public within the 200 feet of that adjoining lot, that this board can't proceed because all of the necessary people who should have received notice have not received notice.
I'm going to defer to our attorney.
Thank you. I was a little disappointed, or a lot disappointed, that you didn't bring this to our attention earlier, so we would have the opportunity to actually do some research and vet the case. Now at this, right as we're about to begin, I received the case. Thank you for sending it to us. So based on my quick reading of it, I did not believe, or did not find that it spoke to this precise issue. I also left it up to the applicant's counsel whether he wished to proceed or to carry the application 1 month's time to enable us to perform some legal research and actually read the case. The applicant's attorney indicated he wished to proceed, and so the board is comfortable hearing the application in consultation with our board professionals.
Mr. Laughlin, I apologize for not getting you the case sooner. It was something we just recognized tonight because we were working off of small copies of the plans and didn't notice the access to this Lot 9. When it came to our attention, we immediately brought it to the attention of the board. I will submit on behalf of my client further information with regard to this case so that you can have it moving forward. But on behalf of my client, I would continue to object to the matter proceeding without that proper notice. But thank you.
Thanks.
I'd just like to say for the record that I had called Mr. Bialkowski a couple of weeks ago because it was my understanding that he might be a potential objector, and if he was, or he represented a client who might be a potential objector, and I wanted to discuss what his objections were, and he said he didn't know if he was going to object or not, and that's the last time I heard from him. I will state that the property which is the subject to this development is 75 Route 22 East, Springfield, New Jersey. That property is owned by RPG, LLC. The property adjacent to it is a development owned by Pop Realty Corp., and both RPG and Pop Realty Corp. Are controlled by my client, Paul Gagliotti. And any easement or driveway that is going from one piece of property to the other is incidental to this development, which is limited to 75 Route 22 East. And a quick review of the case law said didn't reveal anything about notice, and I really don't think that law is relevant to this particular case. So I'm prepared to proceed.
And it's my recommendation that the board can hear this case at this time.
On advice of our board attorney, we'll go forward.
I would ask that at this time, my 4 expert witnesses, Lee Land, Titus Blaze, Weimer, Gary Dean, and Dan Block, be sworn in.
Okay, gentlemen, we'll swear you all in at once. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear testimony you're about to give and any evidence you present to the board is the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes, I do. Okay, we're going to try and make this, I guess, clear for the record. So we'll start with you, sir. So we'll go from your left to right. If you could please give your name, spelling your last name, and then your address for the record.
Blaze Weimer, W-E-I-M-E-R. I am the principal of the Architects Alliance, Newark, New Jersey. The last name is W-E-I-M-E-R.
Thank you.
Leland Titus, T-I-T-U-S, 618 Somerset Street in North Plainfield.
Dan Block, B-L-O-C-H, with Mazer Consulting, 53 Frontage Road, Clinton, New Jersey.
Gary Dean, D-E-A-N, principal of Dolan and Dean Consulting Engineers. I am the traffic engineer for RPG, the applicant.
At this time, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I would like to call Mr. Titus as my first witness. And I would ask, Mr. Titus, are you presently a licensed civil engineer of the state of New Jersey?
I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey.
And when did you become so licensed?
1986 or so.
And what is your your experience and your background as a licensed civil engineer?
I've been doing this I have a BS degree in civil engineering from the University of Wisconsin. I've been doing this kind of work for the last 35 years.
And you've testified before this board on previous occasions?
Yes, I have.
I would ask the board to accept Mr. Titus's qualifications as an expert witness in the field of civil engineering.
Is your license in good standing?
Yes, it is.
We can accept your qualifications.
Thank you. Are you familiar with this application, Mr. Titus?
Yes, I am.
Would you describe the proposal?
The site is situated on Route 22. It is on the eastbound lane. It's south of Route 22.
Sir, we will mark that as A1.
A1, this is sheet.
If you could just describe what it is.
It's sheet 4 of 12, and then it's colorized a little bit just to show what's going on.
Is that the site plan?
That is the striping plan.
Okay.
Anyway, the site is south of Route 22 eastbound. It generally slopes in a southerly direction towards the rear, away from Route 22. The proposal is to construct a large field of parking out front, the building closer to the rear, then there's additional parking in the back. We're going to use the present ingress and egress off of Route 22. Presently, you can ingress the site on the westerly side of the property, and you exit the site on the easterly side of the property. The circulation would generally be through the parking lot. You could drive completely around the building, and you can also drive out to the east onto the adjacent Lot 9, which is other property owned by Mr. Gagliotti.
Are you familiar with the zoning for this site?
Yes, I am.
And what is it?
It's in the HC zone.
And are there any variances required for this proposed development?
Yes, there are. There's a variance required for lot coverage. Now, I'm showing 70%, but I'm seeing in the memos from the consultants that the requirement's 66% or somewhere less than that.
I can answer that. Mr. Chairman, some few months ago, the town amended the ordinance to reduce all of the coverages in all the zones by 10%. So it was reduced then from 70% to 63% in this zone. So that is what the current coverage. So he may have had an older version that didn't pick up the latest amendment to the ordinance.
Okay, so it's 63%.
So anyway, the existing is 70.3%, and the proposed is 88.3%, so there's a variance required for that. Also, there's a variance for building height. The maximum height allowed is 40 feet, we're proposing 54 feet.
Did that change at all?
The height requirement?
The height requirement changed at all?
No, that's the same.
Okay, just the lot coverage.
Just the coverage, that's
Okay.
correct.
There's 100 and there's two numbers floating around on the parking. The plan shows 123 spaces, and in the planner's memo it mentions 135 spaces, and the 135 number is correct, so there's more than 123 that's shown on the plan. What happened is these spaces on the easterly side adjacent to the building were not included in the count.
So it's 135, not 123, okay.
Yes.
Sign.
What's that? I guess there are some sign variances, but the architect is better to speak on that.
Okay.
There is a proposed pylon sign that I'm showing adjacent to Route 22, and it would be just east of the West Village Drive.
Could you explain the drainage for the site?
Again, the site generally wants to drain in a southerly direction. The existing conditions, it drains in that southerly direction, and then it flows across the back in an easterly direction towards Lot 9. That's going to be maintained, the general drainage pattern. And I'm showing a whole series of 15-inch pipes and catch basins that kind of enhance the flow to the back. But that's not what's going to happen. The DEP now allows you to do what they call pervious pavement. And it's pavement that the water is allowed to absorb through the pavement and into the soil. And what this does is drain the whole property into the right through the parking lot, and nothing will ever get to the catch basins as far as the parking lots. And this treats the water quality. What they have to do after they put this pervious pavement in is vacuum the parking lot periodically to pick up the material that is filtered out. The parking lot acts as the filter. So most of this drainage is here just for emergencies. Also, the roof to the building, we're not gonna let the water flow through the roof into the building. So that would drain and run off into this, but there would be a net decrease in the coverage because we're gonna absorb it all right into the soil. And this is a recent change in DEP best management practices.
Could you explain the lighting for this site?
The lighting and landscaping is shown on sheet 5 of the plans. And it shows 9 poles throughout the site. They're all going to be LEDs. They're at 18-foot high. Would be the height of the fixtures. There is four singles. Just would be one head on a pole, and then there would be 2 triples and 1 double and 2 quadruples, and they're around the perimeter of the building. There'd be about 2-foot candles around the fixtures, and it would taper down to about a 1/2 foot candle. It's a pretty bright pattern that's put on here, but on a site that's called 24-hour fitness, I think it's best to have that site bright for safety. The planner is asking about shielding on the backside of some of these fixtures, because we do allow it to overflow onto the adjacent site, and particularly to Lot 9 and Lot 7. But that has additional parking that this site could utilize, and I'd like that to be brighter over there to blend into the site, so there wouldn't be any interference. There's also some overflow onto Lot 10, which is to the south, and that's a car lot. It's just where they store cars for a dealership, and I don't think it would offend them. And there's some overflow to the north along Route 22, and I don't think that would bother Route 22. I don't recommend the backside shields.
Would you explain the parking and circulation of vehicles for the site?
Again, there's a large parking bay out front towards Route 22. Everything circulates. All the flow is two-way. You can go around the back of the building. You can go on both sides. And then you can also cross into Lot 9, which is the subject of the question that was proposed before the meeting started.
And what size vehicles could circulate in that area?
This is set up for passenger vehicles, and it's more than adequate for passenger vehicles. There would be no large trucks in here. There might be a few deliveries once in a while that would come in regular UPS trucks, but that's about it. There's no large vehicles in here, no tractor trailers, no dump trucks.
And the UPS vehicles would be able to manage the site?
Yes, without a problem.
And you had already described the impervious coverage for the site?
Yes, I have.
And could you, how many signs do you show on your plans for the site?
I have the one entrance sign, and then most of them are just directed signs, like one-way signs, do not enter signs, stop signs, things of that nature.
Are there any additional items that you think relevant in your presentation?
No.
I have no further questions of this witness.
Thank you. Anybody on the board have any questions for the witness?
I have a question. With the impervious pavement, you were talking about some
Pervious.
with the pervious pavements, all right?
And I get confused with that myself.
Okay. You talked about some kind of maintenance that's required. Are there standards, and is there something that's going to be required, and maybe you guys know,
Well, you have to prepare
because
a maintenance manual, and typically that's filed in the county in record.
Yeah, an operation and maintenance manual, it was in my letter, but needs to be provided. detailing the, it's listed in the state regulations what that maintenance manual needs to include, and it's things like type of cleaning, schedule of cleaning, record keeping, and the like, so that's a requirement.
Elias, is there anything in your report of September 13, 2017 that you'd like to address with Mr. Tiger?
Art Elias, this is his letter. He was not able to make it today, and my name is Andrew Cangiano, but I'm filling in for Art. But yeah, on the letter, obviously, the points that the engineer and I had spoken, he agreed that he would comply with the request, particularly for stormwater, to revise the plan to address my comments on stormwater. And I agree with the engineer. The DEP allows, and for suitable sites, which this is a suitable site, for pervious paving system. It has good well-drained soils. The applicant has to go and get actual field geotechnical testing to validate his cursory soil analysis. But yeah, it's an ideal site for pervious pavement. It's not very limited truck traffic, mostly vehicle traffic, so it's a good site for that. But I did note a couple of changes he needs to make with regard to water quality treatment and with regard to how we analyze the functionality of the detention system, the subsurface detention system, which is integral to the forest pavement system. So he needs to address or resubmit calculations to that effect, but the functionality of the system will be maintained as he's proposing.
I spoke with him and there's no problem with the engineer.
Okay.
And I had one other question about the lighting. For traffic on Route 22, you can have lighting in the parking lot. Sometimes, personally, when I'm driving on the highway, there's lights shining in my eyes as I'm driving. What is done on the lights in the parking lot to make it safe for the traffic that's driving?
It's on 22. I wasn't proposing a backside shield, and there is some overflow from the front fixture on Route 22, but I can put a backside shield on that one. I have no problem doing that. And that would make it safer on Route 22.
Okay. I think that's probably...
Perhaps that's a good thing to do.
We can propose that.
Thank you.
Is there enough room in the entrance and the in and out to get emergency vehicles if needed?
Yes.
Fire engines and...
Yes, it's the same entrance that's there now. We're using the same entrance configuration and the same exit configuration, and it's very wide. If you look at the planner's memo, he recommends us shrinking those down to provide more parking spaces. We're not going to do that. We're going to leave it the way it is because the traffic expert will explain that a little bit later. It has to do with the permitting for the DOT. It's easier to get a permit if we leave the entrances as they are.
I'll follow up on that question for emergency vehicles, fire truck access. Have you run turning templates for the circulation through the parking lot, say around the backside, around the perimeter of the building, if it needs to access the rear of the...
I have not.
Will you provide that?
I can provide.
Any other questions?
I have one. You answered my question about the driveway width, or the traffic engineer will answer that question. I did mention about lighting that there was a spot on the west side of the building that appeared that along that driveway on the west side that there wasn't lighting coverage.
There's only an emergency exit there. I don't really see the need for it, but we could put some lights mounted on the building directed down in that area, and it would be...
My concern there is that I guess the main entrance to the building is that facade facing Route 22, and there's parking all around the building. If someone had to park on the rear of the building and walk to the front, I take it that would be the route that they would walk.
I don't think so. I think they'd go the other way to the front of the building because there's a sidewalk there. There is a small sidewalk, but it's just to smooth out the curb line around the...
So you don't anticipate anyone walking on that side of the building?
No. I think the employees are going to be parking in the back, and there are entrances back there.
For employees, but patrons will have to come in through
Will
the...
have to come from the front.
All right, well, I mean, it's a consideration. I think maybe a building-mounted lighting may address that issue. That- Okay. Thank you.
Well, you know, you said that this is a 24-hour facility, you want to make it safe. Perhaps there should be some lighting there, just in case.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions from the board, our professionals?
Well, obviously, there's the issue of the parking. I don't know who's going to be providing the testimony on the
I
parking.
think that's going to be the traffic guy, correct? All right. We'll get him, don't worry. Is there anybody from the public that would like to be heard regarding this testimony? Well, I want the public, then the objectors. You'll get your chance next. Anybody from the public? The objectors.
Where would you like me to?
Come on up.
My first question is, when was that survey for that site plan prepared?
February 15, 2017.
Are you aware of the license agreement from Lot 5 to Lot 6 at the front of that property?
No.
Were you aware that that license agreement was terminated recently?
No.
Did that license agreement and the use of the property of the adjoining property owner, was that taken into account with your plan?
I didn't understand the question.
There's a license agreement filed on.
You asked me if I was aware of it, and I told you no.
Correct, and I'm explaining that there's a license agreement whereby the adjoining property owner allowed your client to use a certain portion of their property so that people could gain access to that property and go around what was the right side of the hotel unit that ran parallel with Route 22. And my question to you is, does your plans take into account the property that's incorporated into that license agreement?
I'm not familiar with the license agreement, as I told you, so I have no way of knowing that.
Can we just have this gentleman's name on the record?
Sure, he identified before, but if you wouldn't mind, Counselor, just give me your name again.
Stephen Bulkowski.
Thank you.
Bialkowski. So, correct me if I'm wrong, you have no idea whether your plan incorporates any of my client's property?
No, it does not,
And why does it not?
because we're staying on our own property.
But again, you don't know about the license agreement, and you don't know how it may affect.
Yeah, but you just asked me if we were gonna be on your property, and we're not. You didn't ask me about the license agreement. You asked me if I knew of it, and I said no. And then you're asking me if we're gonna be on your property, and I also told you no.
And how do you know that your survey doesn't show your client operating any of its business on my client's property?
She's not gonna do it. We're gonna draw a line there, and we're not gonna cross it.
And that's the property line and not the license line?
I don't know where the license line is. But you keep asking me if he's gonna be on your property, which that has
Sir,
nothing to do with.
Counselor, please let him finish.
And what line did you use along the westerly line of your client's surveyed property?
Property owner.
And as you know it, that property line isn't affected by the license.
I don't know of the license. You'd have to provide me with a copy, and we can show it on the survey. But until that time, we can't show it.
Do you know what the use is at lot number 9, which is adjoining your client's property?
Yes,
What use is that?
it's under construction now. There's going to be a sky zone, which is, we have trampolines there, and children go there and jump on the trampolines and learn how to jump on trampolines. There's also gonna be a preschool out near the front, and that's where children learn things.
Are you familiar with the parking requirements for lot number 9?
Yes,
And what are the parking requirements for lot number 9 for the uses that are proposed?
Well, you asked me if I was familiar with them, and I am. I can't recite them right now.
Does your survey presuppose that lot number 9 will be used for additional parking?
The survey just shows the conditions as they were on February 15, 2017. It doesn't show anything about proposed conditions on lot 9. The survey shows the conditions as they exist.
There's a notation on your plan that says overflow parking zone.
That's the plan, not the survey. You're asking me questions about the survey.
On your plan. Are you
Okay.
familiar with that notation?
Yes.
And what's the purpose of that?
It's so that if somebody, if there's not enough parking in the parking lot on lot 6, they can go someplace else and park on lot 9.
They can go to lot 9. And I'm asking, what are the requirements for lot 9? And if someone comes from your client's lot and parks on lot 9, do we now have a situation, to your knowledge, where lot 9 has an increased parking that brings it above what's allowed?
I'm going to have to defer that to the traffic expert.
We have a traffic engineer that can answer all these questions.
Okay. Can you tell me what site constraints exist that preclude your client from designing a site that is in conformance with the coverage requirements?
Any that preclude that?
Yeah. There's something unusual about the lot.
No, nothing about the lot.
I have a question for Mr. Bialkowski.
Sir, let's let him finish
Let's let him
first.
finish first.
Mr. B, may I proceed?
He's not a witness,
not
he's
here
just,
as a
he's,
witness to
he's
answer
just,
the
he's
question.
just testifying as a counselor. If you could ask me a question, but.
I want to ask him who he represents. He's an attorney, I'd like to know.
I've already said that I represent the adjoining property owner.
And what's the name?
My client is HEC Holding Company, Inc.
Is that where 24-hour fitness is located?
No, is it?
I don't know, I'm asking you.
I'm not here to answer questions, sir.
Okay.
Okay, next.
I'd like to call Lady Palmer.
And sir, you've been sworn in already, so you remain under oath.
Fine.
Mr. Weimer, are you presently a licensed architect of the state of New Jersey with your license in good standing?
Yes, I am.
Would you please give us a little bit about your experience and background as an
I am the principal of the Architects Alliance. I have been licensed since 1986. I have been the principal of the Architects Alliance since 1995 and a partner in the two firms that preceded it since 1988. I have been representing Pop Realty, or Paul Gagliotti, as his architect of record for almost 30 years now. I have testified in front of this board on numerous occasions.
We ask the board to accept his qualifications.
You can accept your qualifications.
Are you familiar with this application?
I am.
Could you describe it to us?
Yes, this is a two-story fitness center or health center. It's built on a prototype for 24-hour fitness. It's a very recent prototype. It's attempting to comply with the corporate designs. It has 2 stories and approximately 19,600 square feet per floor. I have rendered a perspective of the building as well as the plans and elevations that you have in front of you. If I can enter them into exhibit.
Can we
We're up to A2. This is
A perspective rendering of the elevation in 3 dimensions.
this will be A2. All right, can I? Okay.
Thank you.
A2 is the prototype. And what else are you submitting?
The 2 sheets of elevations. What is, I label here as A4 exhibit. It's drawing A4 that you have is the front elevation and the east elevation of the building rendered in color.
A3. Both exhibits. Anything else?
Rendered elevations, which are drawing A5 in the set, represents the south and west elevation rendered in color.
It's A4. A5.
First floor plan rendered in color, which is in the set, drawing A2.
That's A5.
Drawing A3, which represents the second floor plan rendered in color.
That's A6.
And we also have illustrations of the prototype with interior photographs based on the prototypical design.
Sir, could I ask you a few questions about that one?
Yes.
Do you know who took those photographs?
No, I do not. This is provided from the tenant.
Okay, and that's just proposals?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, would you continue with your presentation?
If I may. Go right to the, just quickly through the plans and the elevations. The
You're referring to A6?
No.
A5?
The plans in general, drawings, exhibit A5, which is the first floor plan, and exhibit A6, which is the second floor plan. If you just look at the large areas of color, essentially what you're seeing are large areas used for fitness centers. There are an indoor pool, there's an indoor basketball court, and several exercise rooms. Those are large open spaces. We have as a unique feature on this facility basketball court, which is on the second floor of the building, which is contributing to the height variance that we're requesting in order to keep a clear play area within the court. From the perspective of the building construction itself, the construction is be very similar to what we have on the remainder of what I'd like to consider the campus. Since we have the adjacent parcel, which is now Lot 9 under construction, with two buildings which are proposed of similar construction. They'll be constructed with an insulated concrete panel system, a tilt-up system whereby the building is constructed on site and lifted into the vertical plane. The building is relatively scored in a pattern that almost replicates a traditional, almost federal-style building with large, what look like large blocks of granite at the base of the building, and and a much grander height. Now,
Excuse me, Mr. Weimer, you're referring to A4, and on A4, could you tell us a little bit about the height variance?
yes. If I can maybe just look at both elevations at the same time.
Referring to A4 and A5?
A4 and A5. You'll see that the elevations step in profile. Now, we're requesting a variance. The permitted height in the highway commercial zone is 40 feet measured to the roof, and it allows a 4-foot high parapet wall. The proposed heights step almost like a wedding cake, with the tallest area being the marquee feature at the center of the building, which has a height of 58'4". The elevations then step respectively with heights of 51 feet, 46'6", and 41'6", as measured to the cornice. And you'll see they step as you go around the building. The reason we're requesting such parapet on this building, or the additional height for the parapets on this building, is because the prototypical building has a lot of roof-mounted equipment. There's, based on the prototype, there are about 14 rooftop units, air handling units, up on the roof, as well as a very large dehumidification system for the pool. The parapet walls are intended mostly to screen this. They also run ductwork across the roof so as to keep the area of play open and unobstructed by large HVAC ducts crossing through them. So your height variance is predominantly an attempt to screen mechanical equipment from view. Because the building slopes slightly toward the rear, average grade is increased by about 1 foot 2 inches off the floor lines.
Could you discuss the location of the various signs, where they would be located?
Yes. We have 3 signs that are mounted on the building. They are based on corporate standards. They all appear very similar. They're oval in shape, 3-colored. There's a slightly smaller sign on the east elevation based on the panel widths that we're mounting to, and the front and the west side are both the same height. Those sizes are outlined on drawing A1 on the architectural plan, but I can repeat them for you here.
Require any variances?
They do. They are going to require a variance based on the fact that there is 3 signs mounted on the building. The ordinance only permits one sign per business. The ordinance also allows only a 5-foot height to the signs. Our signs are 12 feet high on the Route 22 elevation and the west elevation, and 10 feet high on the east elevation. The ordinance typically also permits signs to be approximately 10% of the facade area or less. We're obviously well under that in terms of a percentage. Now, as a justification or for the need for those signs, we're looking at almost 40,000 square feet of building dedicated to a single tenant. I think it's unfair to judge that to be comparable to, say, a much smaller tenant or of 2,000 or 3,000 square feet who would also be entitled to the one sign.
That building set back?
It's set back almost 210 feet from the highway. So I don't consider facade signs to be, by any means, overbearing. In fact, they're quite minimal, as you can see, relative to the buildings themselves. There's also a pylon sign proposed, and again, the pylon sign is proposed based on the corporate standard. The pylon sign is proposed at a height of 27 feet. The ordinance permits the sign to be 22 feet in height. The ordinance also restricts the pylon sign to be 75 feet in area. We have a sign that's proposed at 14 feet by 14 feet, which would be an area of 196 feet. Typically, I know the ordinance is written so that there's visibility under the sign. We do provide visibility under the sign. We will be providing 13 feet of clear area underneath the sign. That would be basically a 14-foot sign with the 13-foot clear below it. If we were to reduce the sign height, let's say, to the 22 feet by just shortening the stanchions and lowering the sign, that would bring the bottom of the sign to about 8 feet in height. It's relatively low, where it can be contacted easily by even a person, much less a vehicle. If you consider the height on some of today's vehicles, a standard Ford Transit van is between 9 and 10 feet, and a box truck almost 11. So I don't see that the 13-foot height below that sign is unreasonable either.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to your presentation?
Only that I think the building is obviously much improved over the conditions that are there on the site, or were there on the site, as the motel. The motel was multiple buildings in a rather dated condition. I think this is an appealing building. I think the stepping effect in both planes, the building steps in and out in the vertical plane as well as in the height. I think it lends an attractive elevation. I think what you see in terms of what the prototype is attempting to deliver is very appealing, and I think it'll be a welcome addition to the highway.
I have no further questions.
Does the basketball court have to be on the second floor? Couldn't it be on the first floor so that the total building height wouldn't have to be as high or as tall?
I think I've never actually discussed that with corporate, but I think their attempt is the exercise rooms that are on the lower floor are going to be serving considerably more people than the basketball courts were. So the basketball courts are kind of removed from the main floor. The big open exercise rooms on the first floor also present an openness to the plan. Exercise rooms being in the green.
You're referring to A5?
I'm referring to the first floor plan, which is Exhibit A5. I think it's more a matter of addressing the number of people who use it and trying to keep the greater, more constant use on the lower floor. The basketball court will only, full court is only accommodating 10 people.
I understand.
So the design, sorry.
No. I mean, I've been to gyms, and typically the basketball courts are on the first floor.
Yes.
So the front elevation, is this a 24-hour standard, or this is your?
Yes, this is relatively consistent with the new prototype that's been developed for 24-hour fitness.
And you described the air conditioning units, dehumidification. How tall are those? So you said the front of this is hiding that equipment, but actually how tall are those pieces on top?
They're mounted on curbs. They're typically, I don't know the exact size of them. They're taller than I am when I stand at them on the roof level. So I would generally say they're probably in the range of 6 to 7 feet in height. The dehumidification unit may be taller.
So this front wall then is from the top of the centerpiece to the off to the other corners here is about 7 feet. Is that the?
No, it's actually much higher. It's actually much higher, and it's done for appearance. It's we need it to screen the equipment, and again, you don't see a building in really frontal view the way we do nicely in a two-dimensional drawing. In reality, depending on as you approach, as with the curve of the road, you'll have a tendency to see from a higher elevation. These are more than adequate in height to screen the view.
How tall is the actual building itself to the roof? Forget the facade.
The highest point is 58'4" above the floor or grade at that.
The actual roof level.
If you have equipment on top of the roof, all right, if the roof is 58 feet high, and the equipment could be as much as 7 or 8 feet, now we're gonna be well above 60 feet. So, as a layperson, how tall is the actual building? 45 feet with a facade
the roof level.
Yeah,
the roof
that's-
level
that's-
is set at the highest roof level is set at 44 feet 4 inches.
Okay. So you have 10 foot of
These are
facade.
tall. These are tall walls surrounding the building. Correct.
That's just the front, that's not. was
No,
that-
it steps down considerably on the side. You'll see.
How much does it step
Well,
down?
the east elevation steps down to 46 feet 6, steps up higher to 51 feet at the rear.
But it's still an indentation where the
Yes.
equipment's, so that's just the facade, that's not the actual.
Correct. The actual building is at a lower height.
Can you explain how you got to 54 feet for the building height relative to the 58.4? Like, how's that? Because I'm confused. Because on the chart, it says 54 feet, but on the elevation, it says it's 58.4.
58, the 54 feet is actually coming off an older variation of the building.
So the height that you,
The height of
would be
50
58.4?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, if measured to the parapet. Now, again, we measure height by ordinance to the roof, to the average roof level at 40
Okay, that's
feet.
what I was asking. It's not
So
the
our
parapet.
roofs are actually relatively close in height. Our roof over the gym, which is our taller roof, is a little more than 4 feet above the allowable height. It's the parapet walls, which typically by ordinance are only about 4 feet tall.
So, just to be clear, so the building height is measured to the roof, not to the highest point, to the lowest
Correct.
point?
Correct.
So those cornices, they
Are
could be
really
20
not
feet high?
not what we consider building height relative to our ordinance. Our ordinance is measured to the roof line.
Okay.
But then, by ordinance, it allows a 4-foot parapet wall. So what we have are taller parapet walls than are allowed by ordinance.
Just to be clear, the reason for that is the equipment on top of it.
Is to try to screen equipment and ductwork from view, yes.
And the other question I had is, you talked about the signage. How is that going to be illuminated?
Oh, it's internally illuminated, backlit, they're panel signs.
Why such a big pylon sign? I mean, it's more than 2 times what the ordinance allows.
Oh, in terms of area?
Yes.
In terms of area. Quite frankly, I think your ordinance is a little skimpy on on what it allows for pylon signs. And again, if you look at it relative to some of the other signs, I mean, our sign that we have on our adjacent property on Lot 9 is considerably larger in area. It's serving multiple tenants, but it's the sign area is, I think, 12 feet wide by 18 feet in height. So it's not that this is unusual for what we have on the highway. This is, and again, the nature of their logo is almost the same width as it is height. So they give me a square proportion. If I were to proportion that back to almost a quarter of the size, because I lose height and width, it's relatively small.
What about if you took the sign in the shape that it is now and put that on the pylon and getting rid of all the extra around the square? How much, if you left the logo the same?
Not the box, but the old.
Would you be better on the overall?
Perhaps, we can look at that.
I think that should be something that we could take a look at.
I would have no objection to looking at that.
Okay. Anybody else have anything right now from the board? Our professionals?
Yeah, again, about the height, our ordinance measures the height from the average ground elevation at the corners to the surface of the roof. And what did you say that dimension was?
We gain 1'2", 1'2" below the floor level, because of the fact that we drop off in the back when we take the 4 corners into account.
Right, but what is that dimension? What is that height? Because I mean.
Okay, for the sake of argument, our roof height at the basketball court is now 44 feet 4 inches above the floor. That would become 45'6" above average grade.
Reason why, I mean, we've assumed, without that information, that the variance you were seeking was for a 54-foot roof height. But actually what you're seeking then is a 45.6-foot roof height.
Correct.
Plus you're seeking a variance for the height of the parapet wall in excess of the 4 feet that's permitted.
Correct.
Okay, that should be clarified. In relation to the wall-mounted signs, 2 of them are on the sides of the building. How is it that, or doesn't that duplicate the function of the freestanding sign? 'Cause the freestanding sign that's proposed is going to be perpendicular to Route 22. So motorists coming down, going eastbound on Route 22, most readily would be able to see that freestanding sign. But with the building set so far back, how visible will those signs on the, well, there's one sign on the west side of the building, since the building is set back, and traffic is actually on the other side of the highway, not coming from the east side. So I don't, if you could explain why those 2 signs on the sides of the building are needed when the function seems to be duplicated by that freestanding sign.
I always find them to be very effective corner signs, because you don't really see just the front of the building. You travel down Route 22 at 60 miles an hour, the front of the building goes by in a blur. You take note of where a building is basically from the opposite side of the highway. You'll see the sign on the corner on the east as you drive west, and vice versa in the other direction. It's a
Not
matter,
from where
and
that building's located. There's no way you're gonna see.
That's, you said 210 feet off
Back.
that's the, because of a football field, that's quite a distance.
I can see seeing the pylon sign, which makes a lot of sense, but the two signs on the side of the building, I agree, I don't think you're gonna even see them, especially from the other side, from the westbound side of 22.
On the westbound side, you're not seeing them at all.
If you're driving on the westbound side, you should be looking ahead of you. You shouldn't be looking to your left like that. I mean, especially if you're going 60 miles an hour.
Again, the argument being that more signs, the better you're identified and the easier you can associate the site from a traffic standpoint, the better. Some of the worst things on that highway are to bypass where you need to go and then have to jug handle around from the center island. I think signage is important in that respect.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just a comment on the
Sure.
pylon sign. You had stated before that if you lowered the pylon sign to the required 22 feet, you'd have about 8 foot from the bottom of the sign to the grade. And
Based on their
the sign
foot
is
sign,
located
correct.
in a grass island.
Yes.
So that wouldn't be problematic.
Should not.
And then with the board's suggestion of reducing the 14 by 14 to something smaller, I see the geometry of the sign logo is about 10 by 10. You know, you'd be almost cutting the sign size in half, 100 square feet versus the 196. And again, the height it's in the grass island, so there's no issue with lowering the height. That's just my comment.
Okay.
Also,
noted.
as far as the roof height, if I understood you correctly, basically the roof itself, the membrane of the roof is about 44 feet high, 44 and change? Is it
Correct,
44.4?
44.4 over the floor.
And on the two sides, the parapet is about 2 feet above that roof height? 46?
No, 51 at that point. 51.
So you have about 6 feet of height, 6-7 feet of
There,
height
yes.
of parapet on the sides or in the front?
That's the side
Okay.
and the rear. Now again, you have that same 51 feet here on the sides of the marquee, dropping to 46.5, dropping again to 41.
On your sheet, I don't have the sheet number on here, but on your sheet, we show the side elevations. I see a dimension of 46.6. What does that represent?
Again, top of the cornice on this small piece right here.
And that's running along the whole westerly and easterly side of the building?
Correct. Or not the whole, but the better part of it, yes.
Okay.
That measures to the first floor, not the grade.
51 from 46.
And it
That's to the
steps
first
up to
floor.
51.
Where the
Correct.
basketball court is in the back.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just one more question on the interior design of this building was also, is there anything which is not standard about the inside of this that is unique to this location as opposed to other 24-hour fitness locations?
This is a new prototype that's been developed. So are there very many like this? No. We're following actually a prototypical design from Texas. And we've varied somewhat from that design. But again, the functions and the relative sizes and relationships are consistent.
Any other questions, comments? Anybody from the public like to be heard on, to have any questions of this witness? Opposing counsel?
Mr. Chairman, in light of the fact that Mr. Weimer is going to have to come back to the next hearing, and you're not hearing any more witnesses tonight, I'd like to reserve until he returns. I do have one note, though. Mr. Weimer keeps talking about corporate standards, and I wanted to know if there will be someone here.
Sir, if you wouldn't mind just coming up to the microphone, that's okay, just so we have it on the record.
That's
Thank you.
I'll just repeat what he said, Steve Lukowski again
Thank
for
you.
HEC. In light of the fact that Mr. Weimer is going to have to come back and talk about signs pursuant to requests from the board, I'd like to reserve questions until we do return, because according to the chairman, you're not going to be taking any additional witnesses after 9 o'clock. But my one question that I actually did have, and it's more directed towards the applicant in general, is the fact that there's a reference to corporate standards, and I wanted to know if there would be someone coming from 24-Hour Fitness that could answer questions about corporate standards.
Counselor, as to your first question, if you have any questions for this witness, I don't know what his schedule is. I don't know whether he's coming back. So I'd like you to ask questions now if you have any, because I just want to make sure you have the opportunity in case he doesn't come to the next meeting. So,
my understanding from one of his responses, he would look into the sign question, so I thought it was just out of necessity, he would have to come back and explain that.
that's not how I interpret it, but if you have a question, I encourage you to ask it now, because he's right here willing to answer questions.
Mr. Weimer, will you be here next year?
I can be.
Again, as can I reserve?
I would like him to ask his questions now. You said you wouldn't take any new testimony, new witnesses after 9 o'clock. He's been testifying. I think he's entitled to be asked any questions that the objector might have now. He doesn't have to necessarily come back.
That's my take on it as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Please proceed.
Mr. Weimer, you referenced corporate standards on a number of occasions. Do you work for 24-Hour Fitness?
No, I do not.
And what are these corporate standards that you're referring to?
We are working hand in hand with their design architects in Texas. They are providing us the base design that we're reworking to some extent to make it buildable on our based on our tilt-up concrete system.
And what variations have you made in your plans from what you understand to be the corporate standards?
We have we use an insulated panel where they use a solid 8 inches of concrete for their building walls. Their building walls are much their building panels are much wider, almost 24 feet wide. Our panel standards are 10 to 12 feet wide, just based on the weight of the concrete and the structural ability to them to be tilted into the vertical position. So we've reworked basically the panel sizes of the exterior of the building. The rest is coming basically from corporate.
So everything else about the building is, as far as you understand, within 24-hour corporate standards?
Yes. The basis of the floor plan, the basis of the appearance of the building, we're manipulating things to a minor extent to make them fit the panels.
And how about the height of the ceiling above the basketball court? What is that?
All coming basically from their standards. They keep about 25 feet clear under the structure.
So it's 25 feet from the ceiling to the floor of the basketball court?
From the underside of the steel, no ceiling.
And how about other 24-hour fitness locations? Do any of them have basketball courts with lower ceilings?
I can't answer that.
Do you know if anyone will be coming from 24-hour fitness to answer that question?
That I don't know.
Are there any guidelines for architects in general that require that it be a 25-foot ceiling above the basketball court?
We design schools, and they are typically in the school, even at the lower levels for younger children, it's a bare minimum of 22 feet. So I know that that's relatively correct in terms of a height.
Is there any requirement that it has to be 22 feet?
There are NCAA standards for ball playing, sure.
Will they be playing NCAA tournaments in this gym?
No, but I'm sure they wouldn't prefer to be smacking the ball against the steel structure above because the steel is so too low.
But to your knowledge, you have no idea whether 24-hour fitness, let's say, has a basketball court with maybe a 15-foot ceiling.
I have no way of knowing that.
Did you ask them that question when you were designing this?
No, I did not.
Is there a reason why you didn't?
Because I see that as relatively standard in terms of the court design.
But if you were able to lower it, you might be able to avoid the need for a height variance, correct?
No, not to this extent.
Earlier, you discussed campus. You said the building on lot 6 and the building on lot 9, and maybe it's buildings on lot 9, you refer to them as a campus. How many buildings are part of this campus?
There are 2 buildings on Lot 9, or will be 2 buildings on Lot 9.
So when you refer to campus, you mean 2 buildings on lot 9 and the 1 building on lot 6, so it's 3 buildings total?
Correct.
Any accessory buildings?
No.
Are you familiar with the parking requirements for lot 9?
I am the architect of record for Lot 9, but do I know the parking standards off the top of my head? No.
You noted that this building would be much nicer than the motel that was on the lot, correct?
Correct.
As we stand here today, what's on the lot where your client proposes to build this
The
building?
motel is in the process of demolition.
How far along is that demolition?
I don't think there's any buildings left. They're still crushing up block, but for the most part, the buildings are down.
So as we sit here today, when you say this would be better, you mean better than an empty lot, correct?
No, I'm comparing it to what was the prior use for that site, which was a
But
hotel.
at that point,
Mr. Chairman, his cross-examination should deal with what he's testified to. He's testified as to architectural plans. I think this is far beyond what he's testified to. And I think his cross-examination is improper, going into what what is on lot 6 now.
I think he did say that this was a nicer building. I think you could let him continue.
Thank you. With regard to the signs that are being proposed for the building, can you tell me what the exact corporate standard is with regard to signage on their building?
Those are direct from corporate,
And the sizes come directly from corporate?
directly from corporate.
And corporate specifically said that the signs on the front and sides of the building and the pylon had to be as big as you designed?
Those were what they gave us as their standard signs.
And did you ask if you could
Yes.
deviate from that?
I did not,
And why didn't you ask that?
because I asked them for their corporate standards. That's what I asked for.
Do you know if any of
We
their-
actually had one of the signs redesigned, one on the east elevation. They gave us a smaller sign to fit the panel.
Do you know if any of the other 24-hour, well, strike that. How many other 24-hour fitness gyms are there in the country?
I do not know.
Do you know if all of those gyms have these size signs?
I'm sure they don't. As I stated before, this is a relatively new corporate standard that developed.
Do you know if any of the corporate buildings that are used as 24-hour fitnesses actually do have these signs today on any existing buildings?
Yes, I can see on the website that there are very similar signs on several buildings, yes.
Can you tell from the website how big the signs are?
No, I cannot.
You said that the air conditioning units were, I believe, 6 or 7 feet tall?
Again, I stated that I don't know the exact models or the exact heights, but I stated that based on what I know from being on roofs, looking at these equipment, that they're taller than me. So I estimated that the unit on the curb was somewhere between 6 to 7 feet in height.
Who's going to specify what units are used in this building?
The mechanical engineers.
And have you spoken with the mechanical engineer about these units?
Not at this point.
Is it possible that there may be units that are not as high, 6 to 7 feet, that can be used for this building?
There's also a possibility that they'll be taller than that. I mean, this is, we're in preliminary designs at this point.
Have you looked at the other signs along Route 22 and how they would compare to a 196 square foot sign? Are they bigger, smaller?
I have designed several of them myself that I know are at least that size.
At what location?
At several locations for Pop Realty. At several locations for Pop Realty.
Can you give me one or two, please?
We have a pylon sign on Lot 9. Steel is currently erected, but that's been approved by this board.
Does that front on Route 22?
Yes, it does.
If you got rid of the basketball court, would there be a need for a height variance?
There would not be a need, may not be a need for a height variance relative to the roof. There'll still be an issue relative to the parapet walls.
Can you tell me what the site constraints are that exist that preclude you from designing a site with conforming coverage?
Again, that's a question for the site engineer.
I don't think I have anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, I think that's going to take us to a conclusion for the evening.
When is the next meeting?
October 17th.
Next meeting will be starting at 6 o'clock.
6:30.
6:30. Is our board secretary here?
Sam?
Before we confirm that, I just want to make sure that we have a agenda where we could do this.
Next meeting is 10/17,
Correct.
6:30.
Correct.
Right.
Will we be,
Are there other items on the agenda, do you know?
I couldn't answer that, probably not yet,
Okay.
but I'm sure they will be.
Okay.
will we be number one as a carryover?
We like to have our residents' applications on the agenda first. Those are short applications, and then take care of non-residential property.
Okay. And there won't be a need to renotice? Okay.
I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second? Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Yeah. Yep.
That's okay. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Counselor.